You checked their face before you checked your own decision. Admit it. Before you spoke, you scanned the room. Before you posted it, you imagined who would see it and what it would cost you. Before you said what you actually believed at dinner, you ran a silent calculation. Will this make them tilt their head? Will this make them go quiet? Will this make them think less of me? And based on that calculation, you edited yourself. Not once, constantly, since childhood. You have been building a self out of other people's faces for so long, you no longer notice you're doing it. You reread the text message 4 times, hunting for tone. You replayed the meeting for 2 days because a colleague's mouth twitched when you spoke. You refreshed the post to watch the number climb, and when it didn't climb fast enough, something in your chest actually dropped over a number generated by strangers. That will not exist in your memory by next year. You chose the job your father could brag about at his own dinner table instead of the one you wanted. You have rehearsed apologies for opinions you haven't even said yet. This is not vanity. Don't let anyone tell you it's vanity. That's too easy an insult, and it lets you dismiss it instead of looking at it. This is architecture. You built the load-bearing walls of your identity out of other people's verdicts, and now you cannot renovate a single room without asking their permission, because you're not sure the house stands without them. Watch how far it reaches into places you'd never call vanity. You softened the truth in a performance review because you didn't want to be the reason someone's face fell. You said, "I'm fine," to a question that deserved an honest answer, because honesty would have required someone to sit with your discomfort, and you couldn't bear making them do that. You have picked restaurants, holidays, wedding readings, haircuts, and entire careers by running the same silent poll. What will this cost me in their eyes? None of these felt like fear in the moment. They felt like consideration, politeness, good judgment. That's the trick of it. The wound wears the costume of virtue so well you stopped being able to tell them apart. Here is what it costs you, precisely. It costs you the decision itself. Every time you check a face before you choose, you have already handed the choice away. You are not living your life. You are running a live focus group on it, in real time, with an audience that will forget the footage by dinner. And the exhausting part, the part that keeps you up when you should be sleeping, is that the jury never adjourns. There is always another face to check. Another comment section. Another silence after you speak that you interpret as a verdict. There was a man who solved this, not a monk who fled to a mountain where no one could judge him because no one could find him. Not a guru selling detachment from a stage, checking the applause meter as he preaches indifference to applause. A man who ran the largest empire on earth while the plague burned through half of it. A man who buried children. A man who spent his last decade freezing on a military frontier, fighting wars he didn't want, surrounded, every single day, by senators who wanted him dead, generals who doubted him, a public that mourned his predecessor and measured him against a ghost. Every condition for becoming a man who needs to be liked, and he became something else entirely. He wrote himself a set of instructions for it, not for you, not for history. He wrote them in a tent, by a river, in the dark, addressed to no one but himself, and he never intended a single stranger to read them. That is exactly why you should. A man performing for an audience tells the audience what it wants to hear. A man writing only for himself, at the edge of exhaustion, tells the truth. What Marcus Aurelius told himself, alone, is the most honest map anyone has ever drawn out of this exact wound. He called it becoming a rock, and once you understand what he meant by that, you will not be able to unsee how much water you have let yourself become. If these words carved an echo within your void, do not turn back. The descent has just begun. Click below, subscribe, and claim your reality. Marcus never says "don't care what people think" as a slogan. He was too precise a mind for slogans. He goes underneath the wound and finds the mechanism. And the mechanism is this: nothing outside you has ever hurt you. Only your judgment about it has. He calls the part of you that judges the Hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. It's the seat of assent, the place where a raw impression arrives, and you decide what it means. And here is the piece almost no one grasps: an insult, a cold reaction, a disapproving silence. These things arrive at you as bare impressions. Data, nothing more. Your colleague's sigh during your presentation is just air leaving a body. He thinks I'm incompetent is a story you attach to the sigh. I am incompetent is a verdict you then signed in your own hand and filed as fact. The sigh never had that power. You gave it the power at the exact moment you assented to the story. This is the whole architecture of the wound from part 1, exposed. You were never actually wounded by what people thought of you. You were wounded by your own ruling faculty, agreeing to be wounded thousands of times a day, so habitually you mistook the habit for reality. Marcus makes the point almost brutally simple and refuses to let himself off the hook for it. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Not eventually, not after therapy, after growth, after enough time has passed. At any moment. That is either the most liberating sentence you will hear this year, or the most indicting one, depending on how many hours you've spent this week outsourcing your peace to strangers who were never asked to be responsible for it. Marcus gives this a picture, and once you see it, you cannot look at your own reactions the same way again. He writes of the mind that has done this work correctly, like a rock which the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea is stilled around it. Read that again slowly. The sea does not stop being the sea. The waves keep coming. The criticism keeps coming. The family keeps disapproving. The group chat keeps judging. The algorithm keeps deciding who's worth watching this week. Marcus does not promise you a calm sea. No Stoic ever promises that. He promises you can be the rock inside it. But most people are not rocks. Most people are water. And water has no shape of its own. It takes the exact shape of whatever contains it. Pour a person into a room full of admiration, and they inflate. Pour the same person into a room full of contempt, and they collapse. That is not a personality. That is a liquid taking the form of the nearest container and calling the sloshing who I am. Look at how far this runs underneath the surface of an ordinary week. A student picks a degree by reading her father's face rather than her own interest, and calls it being responsible. An employee's entire Tuesday is ruined by a single eye-roll emoji reaction to a message he sent in good faith, an actual day of his one finite life, handed over to a yellow cartoon face. A grown adult at a family dinner agrees out loud with an opinion he privately finds grotesque, because disagreement would cost him one evening of mild discomfort in someone else's eyes. None of these people think of themselves as weak. They think of themselves as normal. That is the wound at scale. It has become so common, it no longer feels like a wound. It feels like personality. Marcus names the alternative location, the place the rock actually stands. He calls it the Citadel. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. A man has no stronger place to which he can retreat than his own mind, especially if he has within him the kind of thoughts that let him dip into them and be at once in perfect ease. The Citadel is not the whole self. It is a fortified position, the ruling faculty, walled off, with a single gate, and you hold the only key, an opinion arriving from outside, is a messenger at that gate. It has no authority to enter. It can only enter if the gatekeeper, you, chooses to unlock it and let the verdict walk in and sit down at the table. Here is why this idea is dangerous and why it should unsettle you before it helps you. If the Citadel really holds, if the rock really is unmoved, then you owe no one a performance. Not an explanation for your choices, not a softened version of your opinions, not an apology for taking up the wrong shape in someone else's field of vision. That single realization strips the justification out from under an entire life built on managing how you're seen. It means the hours you spent rehearsing your image, curating your face, calculating your tone, brought you nothing that was ever real. Because the thing you were trying to protect from the sea was never made of stone to begin with. It was made of the sea's own reflection. That should terrify you a little. Good. Marcus wasn't in the business of comfort. He was in the business of what's true. Here is the assumption you almost certainly walked in with, and it needs to die before you go further. That not caring what people think means becoming cold, detached, a man alone on a rock, indifferent to the people around him, mistaking numbness for strength. Throw that out. Marcus destroys it himself. On nearly every page, this was a man who wrote, "Before rising each morning, when you wake up, tell yourself, today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, but none of them can implicate me in anything shameful, and none of them can hurt me, because I am kin to them, and I understand the nature of good and evil, as they do not." Read the order of that sentence carefully. He does not say, "Therefore I will avoid them." He says, "Therefore I will still work with them." The rock is not unmoved because it hates the sea. It is unmoved because it belongs to a different order of thing than the sea does. Nature built it to stand, not to be swept. That doesn't cancel its relationship to the water. The water still touches it every single day. This is the crucial distinction almost every version of "stop caring what people think" gets wrong when it's sold to you cheaply online. Not caring what people think is not the same as not caring about people. Marcus cared about people with a ferocity most self-help content is too shallow to survive. He believed every rational being was a limb of one enormous body. His phrase for it is the cosmopolis, the shared city of all rational nature. And he held himself to relentless duty toward that body. Patience with fools, mercy toward enemies, service to strangers who would never thank him. What he refused was letting their verdict of him become the price of admission for his duty toward them. He served people without needing their approval as payment. That's the distinction the wound in part 1 was built on top of, and mistook for the same thing. You can see this distinction play out in ordinary rooms if you know to look for it. A manager who has done this work will still tell an employee an uncomfortable truth, gently, on time, because duty demanded it. Not avoid the conversation for 6 months, because conflict might cost him the office's warmth. A parent who has done this work will still say no to a child having a tantrum in a crowded store, unmoved by the stranger's stares, precisely because the child's well-being outranks the stranger's opinion of her parenting. That is not coldness. That is what caring looks like once it's no longer for sale to the highest bidder in the room. Now the darker cut, the one most content stops short of, because it's easier to sell you confidence than to make you sit in this. If you have spent years building your sense of self out of the sea, out of faces, likes, approval, the mild warmth of being well thought of, then attempting to become the rock will not feel like empowerment at first. It will feel like disappearing. Because the terrifying question underneath the wound was never really, what if they think badly of me? It was, If they stopped watching me entirely, stopped reacting, stopped commenting, stopped grading, would there be anyone left in this body to notice? That is the real fear people are protecting when they chase approval. Not judgment, erasure. Marcus goes further into the dark than almost anyone is willing to follow him, and this is where the true weight of his philosophy lands. He reminds himself, over and over, of how briefly any of it lasts. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both. They were taken up into the same generative principle of the universe, or dissolved alike into atoms. The emperor and the servant, the most watched man of his century, and the man nobody watched at all. Death does not check status before it arrives. And here is the cut. The very audience you are performing for, whose face you check before you allow yourself a decision, that audience is dying too, right now, while you calculate their opinion of you. The jury is being dissolved even as it deliberates. You are terrified of a verdict from a court that will not exist long enough to remember reading the case. That is the darkest room in this philosophy, and Marcus does not flinch from walking you into it. But he does not leave you there either. This is where the Stoic turn happens, and it is the way through, not further despair. If nothing about you or your audience will last, then the only thing worth constructing is the one thing time cannot repossess, the ruling faculty itself. Character. Judgment. The choices you actually made, not the ones a crowd approved of. That cannot be swept away by the sea, because unlike everything else you've been building, it was never made of water in the first place. There is a way to actually become this. Not perform it while secretly checking your phone every 4 minutes to see who noticed you performing it. 4 instruments. Use them in order. They get harder as they get closer to the truth. Weapon 1. The naked impression, Marcus's core discipline, repeated across the meditations like a drumbeat. Strip the impression down to its bare fact before you let any verdict attach to it. Wipe out false impressions by constantly saying to yourself, "Now it is in my power to let no wickedness be in this soul. I will see the thing exactly as it is, in its true nature." Practice it like this. The next time a reaction lands on you, a cold reply, an unanswered message, a look across a room, say the bare fact out loud, in your head, before anything else. She did not respond to my message. Stop there. Do not let the second sentence write itself automatically. "She's ignoring me because she's angry at me" is not a fact. It is a verdict, and you are the one who signs it. This is uncomfortable because it removes your favorite story, the one where you're the victim of someone else's judgment. Most of the time, you were the author of it. Do this daily, on paper if you can. 1 column for the bare fact, 1 column for the story you are about to attach to it. You will notice, quickly, that the fact column is short and boring, and the story column is where all the suffering actually lives. Weapon 2. The view from orbit. Marcus repeatedly pulls his mind upward and out, above the armies, above the courtrooms, above the wedding feasts and funeral processions, until human affairs shrink to their true size. Tiny motions on a small ball of rock, spinning in silence. Do this deliberately with whoever's judgment is currently occupying your mind. Picture them from outside the atmosphere. 1 human, on a rotating stone, among 8 billion others, each one convinced their opinion is a verdict, handed down from a height it was never issued from. Their disapproval is a single breath, expelled by 1 mammal, on 1 afternoon, on a planet that will not remember either of your names in 4 generations. This does not mean people don't matter. It means their verdict on you was never as large as your nervous system insisted it was. Shrinking it to true scale, is not denial, it's accuracy. Weapon 3. The unbreached citadel you built the fortress in part 2. Now guard the gate. When someone's judgment arrives, a comment, a cold shoulder, a disappointed silence from someone whose approval you have spent years chasing, stop and ask one question before you react. Does this concern my ruling faculty, or only my reputation? If it's reputation, it stays outside the wall. It doesn't get to sit at your table and rearrange your evening. The uncomfortable part isn't the question, it's what comes after, leaving the gate shut. Letting someone stay disappointed in you, letting a misunderstanding stand uncorrected because chasing it down and fixing it would cost you your actual peace to purchase their approval back. Most people cannot tolerate an open wound of disapproval for even one day. The Citadel requires you to. Not forever, just long enough to notice that the sky did not fall, that the disapproval you were so certain would be catastrophic was, in fact, survivable, and that you are still standing exactly where you were before the wave hit. Weapon 4. The Epitaph Test. Marcus wrote to himself constantly of his own death, not to depress himself, but to calibrate himself. Memento mori as an instrument of proportion, not despair. Do this literally. Write your own epitaph, your name, 2 dates, the second one left blank. Look at it. Now take whatever verdict is currently occupying your mind, the comment, the sigh, the unanswered text, the family member's disappointment, and ask whether it deserves a place inside those 2 dates. Most of it will not survive the test. It will look, suddenly, like what it actually is. Weather, passing across a life that has an ending you can now see written down in your own hand. This is the harshest weapon, and the most clarifying. Almost nothing survives being placed next to your own death. That is precisely why it works. 4 instruments. Use them in that order, because each one demands a little more honesty than the last, and honesty is the actual muscle being trained here, not confidence. Confidence is water pretending to be a rock. This is the rock itself. Go back to where you started. You checked their face before you checked your own decision. That was the wound, not a flaw in your character, an architecture, built one small surrender at a time, until checking became instinct, and instinct became identity. Look at the distance between there and here. You now know the sigh was never the injury. Your assent to it was. You know the Citadel exists, and that you, not the crowd, hold the only key to its gate. You know the audience whose verdict you feared is dissolving in exactly the same current that will eventually take you. Alexander and his mule driver, absorbed into the same silence. No separate verdicts issued for either. You know 4 instruments that do not ask you to feel differently. They ask you to act differently. Today, the next time a face in a room decides your evening for you. This was never a philosophy of not caring about people. Marcus served an empire of people he never once needed to like him back. It is a philosophy of refusing to let their verdict be the price you pay for your own decisions. The sea keeps moving. It was always going to keep moving. Your task was never to calm it. Your task was to stop being made of the same water it's made of. You will still feel the waves. Marcus felt them until the day he died, in the Senate, on the frontier, in his own family. The rock does not stop the sea from crashing into it. It simply stops being reshaped by it. That's the whole art. Not numbness, not exile from the world, a different material, standing in the same water everyone else is drowning in, unmoved, still there in the morning. He never wrote his instructions for an audience. He wrote them at night, in a tent, for no one but himself, certain no stranger would ever read them. 2,000 years later, a stranger did. You just did. Be the rock. Let them be the sea. What decision are you still asking someone else's face for permission to make? Tell me below.